the infusion of positive energy into the lives of single Latter-day Saints everywhere. This is Joy in the Journey Radio.
And welcome back, peeps, to the wonderful, splendiferous, joyous episode of Joy in the Journey Radio. I am Lance, your host for Joy in the Journey Radio. You can see I'm here in my new digs. I haven't yet completely got set up. I'm still in transition of getting everything in here, but we are live and ready to go here. And I'm excited for the program today. This is episode number 321. Today, we're going to have another episode of Book Club. And today's book, I have it right here, Obstacles the Way by Ryan Holiday. I can tell you, this book is filled with a lot of things that we've been talking about for a long, long time here on Joy in the Journey Radio. So I'm just excited to just delve in and dig into this book. And one of the problems I had with this book, though, is that it is wonderful, right? Because being wonderful, it's a two-edged sword. On the one hand, it's wonderful in the sense that it's good. So you're reading it, you're like, yes, 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 yes. This is just reiterating like almost everything we've been saying so far here in the program. So I was happy to see that, somebody presumably outside the faith, coming at it from a different perspective, is arriving at the same conclusions that we've been preaching for years here on the program. So, that was very encouraging to see. But it's also wonderful in a bad sense, because I ran into the same obstacle that I have when I'm looking at General Conference and trying to figure out, okay, which conference talk am I going to talk about? Because every month or so we go back and revisit the previous General Conference, and I've been having a hard time picking out, which ones. I mean, there's some that just shine, but as a general rule, there's a lot of good ones that I could pick, and I just have, it's a really difficult choice. So, yeah, that's something that just. I had to say problem with this book. I have to be honest with you. I mean, so many excerpts and snippets that I wanted to take out to share with you peeps out there, but I had to just narrow it down. So hopefully you get something out of this. In the future, hopefully I can get people to come in on the program and we can have an actual discussion around the snippets that come out of the book. But, I am where I am, so I'm going to do what I can with what I have, and I'm just going to keep moving forward because that's the way that we thrive as Latter-day Saint singles. So let's dive into this. So let's see. Now, there we go. That's a better button. So here's the first snippet, quote from the book. To one person, a situation may be negative. To another, that same situation may be positive. Nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so, as Shakespeare put it. That actually comes from Hamlet, one of my favorite Shakespeare plays. It used to be, actually for many years, it used to be my favorite Shakespeare play. And then that was before I read Twelfth Night. And then, Twelfth Night took top spot. It's got the gold medal. Hamlet, still at the silver medal, though. Silver's saying something. But yeah, that's just a quote out of Hamlet. Anyway, back to the quote here. Laura Ingalls Wilder, author of the classic series Little House, lived that idea of facing some of the toughest and unwelcoming elements on the planet. Harsh and unyielding soil, Indian territory, Kansas prairies, and the humid backwoods of Florida. Not afraid, not jaded, because she saw it all as an adventure. Everywhere was a chance to do something new, to persevere with cheery pioneer spirit, whatever fate befell her and her husband. That isn't to say she saw the world through delusional rose-colored glasses. Instead, she simply chose to see each situation for what it could be, accompanied by hard work and a little upbeat spirit. Others make the opposite choice. As for us, we face things that are not nearly as intimidating, and then we promptly decide we're screwed. This is how obstacles become obstacles. In other words, a lot of the things that present themselves to us as challenges in Elliot Single's life They're obstacles in our heads. And if we could just change our thinking, then, you know, half our problems go away. I've been saying this for years, and now here it is. Somebody else, like I was saying, coming at it from a completely different vantage point through completely different means, arriving at the same conclusion. Half of our problems are really inside of our heads. It's related to the way that we think. And, I really love, what he's saying up here earlier, where he says, y- you know, not afraid is you welcome all of these challenges because you see it all as an adventure. And I had to step back and think to myself, how many of us Latter-day Saint singles see LDS singles life as an adventure? Just throwing that out there. I mean, how many of us look at our lives and instead of seeing the challenges and the obstacles that we have to face, how many of us look at it and say, well, I know what this could be. I know what this could be. So I think that's an important shift in the way that we think and approach the reality of our lived experience. Um, so because so many of us singles see singleness as something to escape. We're trying to get out of being single, and yet, you know, like I've been saying for years, it's like you really want to thrive as an already single. Thriving means embracing the best and not running away from opportunity. And I think that's the point that Holiday is making here is that when you start seeing things as they could be, of course, it says accompanied by hard work and a little upbeat spirit. So you got to bring your attitude and you got to bring your effort. But once you do that, you can make monumental changes, and the same situation that was once deplorable can become empowering. So I really like that. Um, Here's the next. Oh, wow. Yeah. So let's get into this one. The right perspective has a strange way of cutting obstacles and adversity down to size. But for whatever reason, we tend to look at things in isolation. We kick ourselves for blowing a deal or having to miss a meeting. What we're forgetting in that instance, as billionaire serial entrepreneur Richard Branson likes to say, is that business opportunities are like buses. There's always another coming around. One meeting is nothing in a lifetime of meetings. One deal is just one deal. In fact, we may have actually dodged a bullet. The next opportunity might be better. The way we look out at the world changes how we see these things. Is our perspective truly giving us perspective? Or is it what's actually causing the problem? That's the question. I think that question right there, just cutting in here, that question right there is absolutely brilliant. Is our perspective truly giving us perspective? Or is the way that we're looking at a situation the real source of our difficulty? Here he goes on. The difference between right and wrong perspective is everything. How we interpret the events in our lives, our perspective, is the framework for our forthcoming response, whether there will even be one or whether we'll just lie there and take it. And then this last part, I think, is key. Where the head goes, the body follows. Perception precedes action. Right action follows right perspective. Again, you've got to get your thinking right. So many of the problems that we try to address in our lives are made with efforts tackling the outcome, the result, because that's what we want to change, because that forms the bulk of the content of our lived experience. We want the result to change. But here, if you look at it from a different way, a different perspective, and understand that, well, okay, so the results that you have come out of what you do, and what you do comes out of the way that you think and how you see the world frames the response that you're going to give, which is the action that then produces the results that you have. So you really need to take a step back and think to yourself, how can I change the way I look at things? This quote from Richard Branson is a popular one, and I like it. When you apply it to Elliot Single's life, just take what he's saying here in terms of not business opportunities, but in terms of dating. So many of us get down when um, an opportunity. We look at a potential dating candidate and we want to progress to the next stage of the dating journey with said person. And in order to do that, we need to procure an agreement that's connected with that stage. But an agreement means two parties have to agree, right? And that doesn't always happen. So when it doesn't happen, we so many of us just want to throw in the towel. And this perspective here, business opportunities, so I say dating opportunities are like buses. There's always another coming around. Just wait and bide your time. There's another one around the corner. And for all the talk that I hear about how dating is a numbers game, it's not really a numbers game. It really is not a numbers game. You really need two things in line to be successful with the dating journey, right? Because just go back to fundamentals like we've been saying before. Like there are stages to the dating journey. Each stage has an agreement that you need to have in order to progress to that stage. Well, how do you secure the agreement? All agreements are secured by being agreeable enough. You don't have to be perfect, just agreeable enough. And when you're agreeable enough, then you can secure that next stage of the dating journey. Well, how do you become agreeable enough? You work on yourself, right? You become something more, something that is more agreeable. I think that's got to be key. That's the first part, right? And then the second part, okay, is crossing paths with someone who thinks you are agreeable enough. So it's not really a numbers game, because if you're not agreeable enough, you could be surrounded with thousands of potential dating candidates and none of them will take you in because you're not agreeable enough. So we got to, focus on the fundamentals. And, the most important change that you can make to yourself to become agreeable enough, it all starts with how you think. Because, I mean, it's just like he says here at the bottom, where the head goes, the body follows. Perception precedes action. Right action follows the right perspective. And remember, the results that we have in our lives that form our lived experience, those results come out of action. So if we want right results, you have to have right action. And as he says here, right action follows the right perspective. Get your thinking right, and everything else falls through. Let's take a look at another quote here. Oh, this one's a good one. Check this out. In our own lives, we aren't content to deal with things as they happen. We have to dive endlessly into what everything means, whether something is fair or not, what's behind this or that, and what everyone else is doing. Then we wonder why we don't have the energy to actually deal with our problems. Or we get ourselves so worked up and intimidated because of the overthinking that if we just gotten to work, we'd probably be done already. Our understanding of the world of business is all mixed up with storytelling and mythology, which is funny because we're missing the real story by focusing on individuals. In fact, half of the companies in the Fortune 500 were started during a bear market or recession. Half. The point is that most people start from disadvantage, often with no idea they are doing so, and do just fine. It's not unfair, it's universal. Those who survive it survive because they took things day by day. That's the real secret. Focus on the moment, not the monsters that may or may not be up ahead. I love this quote. It's about living in the moment, which is another message that we've been, pounding away here on Join the Journey Radio. Like live in the moment. We get so caught up with interpreting past events or trying to predict all the possibilities of the future. Really, to thrive, you focus on the place where you're at. You focus on living in the present moment. But as Holiday says here, we aren't content to deal with things as they happen. We don't want to look at things that are just directly in our face in the place where we actually are. You want to keep, going back to the past and dragging this stuff back out. Or we look to the future and think about what if, and we get ourselves so worked up and anxious over what might be. Um, and then, again, he's talking here about businesses, but again, let's translate this into the world of dating. Our understanding of the world of dating is all mixed up with storytelling and mythology. Because again, we stray away from fundamentals. We want we want things that make sense. We have to make things have certain meanings that validate our internal identity for whatever it is, the identity that we've chosen for ourselves. And that makes us feel good, that makes us feel like we're not failures. Which is funny, he says, because we're missing the real story by focusing on individuals. And in this search for making sense out of everything, isn't it interesting how we're always focused on the actions that other people take or that they don't take? you know, Invitations that were extended were not accepted. Or I got an invitation from somebody that is just so absolutely wrong for me. When really, okay, let's just tackle each one of those, right? So the first one, obviously coming from the man's side, extending the invitation. Although, sometimes the women do Sadie Hawkins, it happens, but it's more usual for the man to to extend the invitation. So, invitation gets rejected. All that means is that you're not agreeable enough for that person, right? The way you're constituted now may be good enough for a different person. So you got two choices, right? You got two choices to make. So the first option is go look for somebody else for whom you're already agreeable enough. And the second option is make changes in yourself so that you are agreeable enough. That's really what you got, right? If you want to move forward, those are your only two options, right? Because any other option that you take, right, is not going to move you forward because it's not going to lead to the agreement you need to progress to the next stage of your dating journey. And remember, the fundamental principle is if you don't have an agreement for that particular stage, you do not progress to that stage. So you just got to get your head around. It's like, I got to just make changes in me to become agreeable enough. And, oftentimes the key factor in deciding which route you take to move forward is in, how much work do you want to do? How much work do you want to do? Most of us don't want to do any work, right? We don't want to think that we're not good enough as we are, that we should be loved for who we are, and we shouldn't have to change ourselves or improve ourselves in any way in order to be loved. And that's a whole rabbit hole we could talk about sometime. Because it's just there's some loony logic behind that with assumptions and everything. But we don't want to make changes in ourselves. And, the fact of the matter is, you got to ask yourselves, like, what kind of a companion do I want? Because I got to be honest with you, um, the higher the quality, so to speak, um, you, the more you're going to have to make changes in you. Because most of us are not quality people. I mean, naturally, most of us are not top shelf. So you got to ask yourself, what do you really want in a companion? What do you really want? And, if you want something that is top shelf or approaching top shelf, then you need to be willing to make changes in you. Because, I guarantee you, from the way that the female, mentality is, naturally hardwired, you know, um, they do not, for the most part, they don't date down, and they certainly do not marry down. They want to go up. They want someone who's, levels above them. So that just indicates the level of work that you have to do, depending on who it is you're trying to attract. the higher up you go, the more work you got to do. Because again, you can't just meet her at her level. She wants to go up. So you got to lift yourself up even higher, which is more work. So you got to ask yourself, right? Find someone who thinks you're acceptable enough as you are, which means you're going to be dating a woman who's lower in station than you are. Because that way, if she's not going to go up, she's not going to agree to it, right? So if you don't want that type of person, then you got work to do, bro. You got work to do. That's just the bottom line of it. Okay. Now, the other part of this that we were looking at was, gosh, I just had a brain fart. Was from the woman's side, and it was saying that, the invitation that I got was from somebody that I don't really want. Well, okay, since I already, broached this topic of, the female mentality and wanting to go up, let me just say that's a feature of the natural woman. The natural woman, like the natural man, is an enemy to God. So, you know, y- you need to act against that. That's actually the first step to getting rid of the natural mindset for both men and women. And we find this in Mosiah 3:19, the famous scripture that talks about how the natural man is an enemy to God, right? And then, we find Mormon there listing, because he's the one actually compiling the records here, right? We find him listing, 3 essential steps for, getting rid of the natural mindset. He calls it the natural man, but really there's a natural man and a natural woman. They're based in the same mindset, but the manifestations of that mindset are different in men and women. And that's why I make the distinction, because it's very significant, those differences. So if we just go off on that, and so there's 3 steps to get rid of the natural mindset. And the first is, because that's what the scripture says, right? It's like, the natural man is enemy to God, and it will be forever and ever, unless, and now here we come the steps, he heals the enticings of the Holy Spirit, and putteth off the natural man, and becometh a saint through the atonement of Christ. And so, it goes on. So essentially, the 3 steps are: 1, you got to follow the Spirit, and it's the Spirit that kind of gives us the realization that we're not where we need to be. We're not doing what we need to do. And so, you know, that's the first step. So, you get this dating invitation from someone that, you really don't like, because the natural woman is saying, this is not somebody higher than me. Okay. Now, if the person is not an active and worthy Melchizedek priesthood holder, then I would I would not criticize that decision to say no. But if the person is a worthy Melchizedek priesthood holder who is active, who is demonstrating a desire to make and keep sacred covenants, I would think twice before saying no. Because you really got to have a really good decision, like really good justification for saying no. Because in essence, what you're doing is halting the eternal progression of one of Heavenly Father's children. And that's something that's not to be taken lightly. So I think we need to be very serious about what we consider to be deal breakers. Because, we are talking about eternal progression here. And especially when you're dealing with someone who has demonstrated, through actions consistently over, long span of time, the desire to make and keep sacred covenants, and you're holding that person back from progressing in the eternity, you better have some really good justification for saying no. And it can't just be something like, well, he's not tall enough. Because in eternity's physical height means, buckus. And I'm not talking Rocky's dog. So we need to have some really good justifications from the eternal perspective to what our deal breaker should be. But okay, again, I'm getting sidetracked here. So back to the question at hand. So, think twice before you know, you say no. Okay. You're thinking about, 'cause again, this goes back to what we were saying before. Your thinking is the problem. Your perspective is the problem. You're seeing this invitation as, a doorway to eternal misery. When in fact, if you just change the way you think about things, then it could become something completely different. Because again, going back to the three steps in Messiah 3:19, first the spirit, okay, helps you recognize that maybe you should say yes to this person. Then second, okay, so there's the high sin of the Holy Spirit, putteth off the natural man. In other words, you've got to act against your inclination. So if you're inclined, the natural woman says, don't date this guy, but he's a worthy priesthood holder, then I recommend going against that inclination and saying, yes, I'm going. This is just a casual date. You're at that stage of the dating journey. So, there is no long-term commitment. You're only committed to, doing something with somebody for a specific time, specific place. And once that's done, then there's no more connection between you two. And then you can evaluate later if you want to do something again or not. And in fact, I highly recommend a minimum of 3 dates in different places, different environments to really assess whether or not somebody's going to fit well for you or not. Because I mean, let's face it, we're not interchangeable parts, right? I mean, we some people just going to work better than others. So, these are all decisions that we have to make. So anyway, that's the second step. We have to act against the inclination. And then the third step is become a saint through the atonement of Jesus Christ. In other words, allow the atonement of Jesus Christ, embrace the atonement of Jesus Christ, and allow it to transform your nature so that you no longer want what the natural woman wants. You want what the covenant woman wants. And this person that before was so undesirable will actually feel desirable because your nature inside has been changed through Jesus Christ, through the power of Jesus Christ and his atoning sacrifice. It cleanses you of that natural desire, that natural inclination, so that you adopt a holier, higher way of living. This is what we and keep in mind, this is the same progress for the natural man to be rooted out of men. Have the same process. Okay, so you have candidates there who are worthy, and they're demonstrating through time that they want to keep and keep sacred covenants. Then you should consider extending dating invitations to them. Okay, and hey, you know what? I actually walk the walk. I walk the walk because let me tell you something. My ex-fiance was a fat woman. So I don't want to hear anybody saying I'm not walking I'm telling people to do what I don't do myself. I am doing what I'm preaching to other people. And let me tell you, it changes the whole relationship. The reason why I can embrace it so freely is because I understand the fundamentals of the dating process, the dating journey. Right? I understand that I don't have to make an agreement that I don't really want to. It completely frees me up, right? Because again, there's no progression without the agreement. So the other person can think that, we're some hot ticket item. If I don't really agree to that, then it's not so. And I just live in the present moment, which is what this quote here on the screen is all about. Focus on the moment, not the monsters that may or may not be up ahead. So, I mean, just changing the way you think again is really transformational. It's the main reason why I took this book and said we're gonna talk about this book, for book club because it just reaffirms all the stuff we've been saying here on Join the Journey Radio. Here's our next quote: Steve Jobs refused to tolerate people who didn't believe in their own abilities to succeed, even if his demands were unfair, uncomfortable, or ambitious. The genius and wonder of his products, which often felt impossibly intuitive and futuristic, embody that trait. He had pushed through what others thought were hard limitations, and as a result, he created something totally new. No one believed Apple could make the products it made. In fact, Jobs was pushed out in 1985 because the board members at that time felt that Apple's foray into consumer products was a lunatic plan. Of course, they were wrong. Jobs learned to reject the first judgments and objections that spring out of them because those objections are almost always rooted in fear. This is radically different from how we've been taught to act. Be realistic, we're told. Listen to feedback. Play well with others. Compromise. Well, what if the other party is wrong? What if conventional wisdom is too conservative? It's this all too common impulse to complain, defer, and then give up that holds us back. And again, look at what this default setting: complain, defer, and then give up. Right? It's much easier to do this than it is to actually sit down and do the work that will make us more agreeable and help us to secure the agreements we need to progress to each succeeding stage in the dating journey. We gotta, if you want to thrive, you got to start living intentionally. You got to resist this impulse. Again, going back to Messiah 3:19, you want to get rid of that natural mindset? Well, first follow the Spirit, which helps us to recognize, the decisions that we're making that are conforming to the natural mindset. And then we've got to deliberately, intentionally act against that impulse. And then embrace the atonement and let it transform our very nature so that we become new creatures in Christ and we start wanting something different. It's just amazing. Amazing. So let's continue on here. So here we've got the next quote. Life can be frustrating. Oftentimes we know what our problems are, and we even know what to do about them, but we fear that taking action is too risky, that we don't have the experience, or that it's not how we pictured it, or because it's too expensive, because it's too soon, because we think something better might come along, because it might not work. And you know what happens as a result? Nothing. We do nothing. Tell yourself the time for that is past. The wind is rising. The bell's been rung. Get started. Get moving. We often assume the world moves at our leisure. We delay when we should initiate. We jog when we should be running, or better yet, sprinting. And then we're shocked when nothing big ever happens, when opportunities never show up, when new obstacles begin to pile up, or the enemies finally get their act together. Of course they did. We gave them room to breathe. We gave them the chance. So the first step is take the bat off your shoulder and give it a swing. You've got to start to get anywhere. Just because the conditions aren't exactly to your liking or you don't feel ready yet doesn't mean you get a pass. If you want momentum, you'll have to create it yourself right now by getting up and getting started. Again, we're talking here about the natural mindset. The default setting is to do nothing, right? It's a default setting that comes to all of us. It's hardwired into our natures. It's just who we are, initially, but we can be something different. We can be something more. We can live intentionally. But of course, that takes work, that takes effort. And the status quo is to just keep things as they are, right? We want to maintain the status quo. And so we don't want to have to do any work because it's much easier to just say, let's just let things be. Things should just come to me because I'm righteous. I should get this blessing because I'm righteous. Well, let me tell you something. The scriptures, are full of examples of righteous people who didn't really, what they got was certainly not what they deserved. Benadiah is one of the first ones that comes to my mind. Here's a righteous man. He's only, doing what the Lord told him to do. And what does he get out of it? He's burned at the stake. That's not really what he deserved. And yet it's what he got. Right? Again, life can be frustrating, right? Very often we know what our problems are. We know what to do about them, but we don't act. We don't act. And yet that's the one thing that we need to do. And then, many of us singles are just shocked when year after year, we keep going to these New Year resolutions, coming back and forth with it, saying this year is going to be the year. It's going to be the year that everything changes for me. and the blessing that I've been looking for is going to come. And, you know, and then it doesn't come. And then the next year we do the same thing and it doesn't come. Well, it seems like it, you're like a hamster in a wheel. You just keep running and running and running and running, but you're not really going anywhere. It's because you're not doing what you need to do to get where you want to go. Let that sink in. We fear taking action is too risky. We don't have the experience, or that, we have all these what if, but, yeah, but, yeah, but, yeah, but, that is designed to keep us in the safe space of the status quo, and if you don't do anything different, you're not going to get any results that are different. That's just the bottom line. You want different results, you have to take different action. A different action comes from a different way of thinking. So, get your head screwed on straight and then get to work, because, it's like it says right here, what happens as a result? Nothing. So if you want to keep getting nothing in your life, just keep doing the nothing that you're doing now. But if you want to have something, wonderful, then you got to take action that leads to that something wonderful. And that's really where it all comes in. Here's our next quote. The thing standing in your way isn't going anywhere. You're not going to outthink it or outcreate it with some world-changing epiphany. You've got to look at it and the people around you who've begun their inevitable course of doubts and excuses and say, as Margaret Thatcher did, you turn if you want to, the lady's not for turning. Too many people think that great victories like Grant's or Edison's came from a flash of insight, that they cracked the problem with pure genius. In fact, it was the slow pressure, repeated from many different angles, the elimination of so many other more promising options that slowly and surely churned the solution to the top of the pile. Their genius was unity of purpose, deafness to doubt, and the desire to stay at it. So what if this method isn't as scientific or proper as others? The important part is that it works. Working at it works. It's that simple, but again, not easy. This is something that he says all throughout his book. He says, like, the ideas that we need to embrace are simple ideas, but the actual implementation may not be easy. It may actually be hard to put that into practice. And, think about this quote in terms of the challenges that we have, especially with dating. We need more of an attitude that says, you turn if you want to, I'm not for turning. Their genius was unity of purpose, deafness to doubt, and the desire to stay at it. In other words, we're going back to, the book that we looked at before, Atomic Habits by James Clear, where, he actually demonstrates that success is really the acclamation of many small daily victories. And so you just do the little things that you need to do every day to build the habits that will then create the identity that will then be consistent with the actions that give you the results that you want. Because too many of us are attacking the results part when we really need to look inside and change the identity. And again, this is where Mosiah 3:19 comes in. The atonement of Jesus Christ can transform us inside to where we not only we have a different identity because we want different things. The internal desire to be what we were before is gone. And to be somebody that can actually feel, good and benefited and ennobled by something that the natural mindset would reject as being not good enough, not acceptable enough. Yeah, I mean, that's where I think we want to be. And so working at it works. It's just that simple. You just have to sit back and just do the work. We got two more quotes left. So here's the first of those two. It's okay to be discouraged. It's not okay to quit. To know you want to quit, but to plant your feet and keep inching closer until you take the impenetrable fortress you've decided to lay siege to in your life, that's persistence. Edison once explained that in inventing, the first step is an intuition, and it comes with a burst. Then difficulties arise. What set Edison apart from other inventors is tolerance for these difficulties and the steady dedication with which he applied himself towards solving them. In other words, it's supposed to be hard. Your first attempts aren't going to work. It's going to take a lot out of you. But energy is an asset we can always find more of. Stop looking for an epiphany and start looking for weak points. Stop looking for angels and start looking for angles. There are options. Settle in for the long haul and then try each and every possibility, and you'll get there. When people ask where we are, what we're doing, how that situation is coming along, the answer should be clear. We're working on it. We're getting closer. When setbacks come, we respond by working twice as hard. This reminds me of an incident when my grandfather, who got married twice, actually, and I was there for the second wedding. Um, it was in the temple, and so there's a lot of family and close friends there in the celestial room. And as he was leaving with his new wife, I was there by the door, and greeting all these people as they were coming out, and um, you know, um, he got to me, and I congratulated him, on his new marriage, and he says, "Well, looks like I've done this twice, and you haven't done this once. You better get busy." And my response was, "Yeah, I'm working on that. I'm working on that." I mean, and that should be the response that we get. I mean, how many people, how many times do we have to deal with that sort of thing? I don't know. We deal with it a lot because it can be a sensitive issue. And I think so much awareness has been brought to singles and singles issues within the church. After all, we are the majority of the adult membership. We don't act like the majority, but we are the majority, right? So there is an increased awareness about how our culture is centered around this one thing that we don't really have by definition. And so it can be, kind of um, indelicate. Some people may not feel that it's appropriate to ask about it. So we might get the question a lot, but it comes up once in a while. I've had it come up on occasion, and you know, the answers here should be clear. We're working on, we're getting closer. When setbacks come, we respond by working twice as hard. Okay. Now, of course, we need to make sure that we're taking the right action, because if you work twice as hard on the wrong action, then that's just going to give you more of the wrong result. Right. So if you want right result, you got to take right action. Right. And how do you know you have right action? Get this thing straight on, screwed on straight, peeps. That's how it happens. You get your thinking straight. Now, he says it's okay to be discouraged, but it's not okay to quit. I think this is important because, I mean, we are going to find obstacles. Not everyone is going to, you know, have the desire to um, make the right choice, because we're all on a journey, right? And not everyone's as developed as maybe they should be. And it's not for you to judge that, someone came along and it's not as developed as, maybe they should be. It's not for you to judge. The only thing for you to judge is what you should be doing right now in this moment. Focus on you and what you should be doing and living in the present moment, you know? Um, but, as we start living in that present moment, understanding that it's supposed to be hard, it's supposed to be challenging, because that's what stretches us and allows us, that gives us the impetus to grow. If there's no challenge, there is no growth. So again, I love what he says here. Stop looking for an epiphany and start looking for weak points. In other words, stop looking for, we're all looking for this miracle person to just waltz into our lives and make everything better. When you really need to just cut that out. Stop looking for angels and start looking for angles. Now I do believe that we should expect miracles to happen along the way, but I think for most of us, we we wrongly assume that we have to be largely dependent on a miracle in order to get the blessings that we want in our lives. I think that um, the Lord has provided enough that we don't need the miracle to get where we need to be. We just need to start taking right action. We start learning what those right actions are. And a lot of that comes with getting your thinking straight, right? So there are options, but the way it's going to come for most of us is by, like it says here, settle in for the long haul and try each and every possibility. Eventually, you will get there. So here's our last quote. And again, there's so much in the book that I I could just keep talking about this for a long time, but yeah. Oh, I can't be doing that. We got time constraints with the program. So we're actually filling up more of the program with this episode because of it. But yeah, okay. So anyway, here's the quote. We don't get to choose what happens to us, but we can always choose how we feel about it. And why on earth would you choose to feel anything but good? We can choose to render a good account of ourselves. If the event must occur, amor fati, a love of fate, is the response. Don't waste a second looking back at your expectations. Face forward and face it with a smug little grin. It's a little unnatural, I know, to feel gratitude for things we never wanted to happen in the first place. But we know at this point the opportunities and benefits that lie within adversities. We know that in overcoming them, we emerge stronger, sharper, empowered. There's little reason to delay these feelings, to begrudgingly acknowledge later that it was for the best, and we could have felt that in advance because it was inevitable. You love it because it's all fuel, and you don't just want fuel, you need it. You can't go anywhere without it. No one or no thing can. So you're grateful for it. That is not to say that the good will always outweigh the bad or that it comes free and without cost, but there's always some good, even if only barely perceptible at first, contained within the bad, and we can find it and be cheerful because of it. This, I think, is probably the best quote to end the program on and to place last. So, again, a lot of us don't get to choose what happens to us. You know, there are choices that other people's make that influence the lived reality of our lives. And single status is a great example of that. Other people make decisions that lead us to be never married, divorced. Um, in some cases, they make decisions that lead you to be widowed. Because I'm sorry, if you're not taking care of yourself and you die from some medical condition that could have been totally prevented by living a different lifestyle, then okay, yeah, you're widowed because your spouse made choices that led to that eventual end. So, I mean, there are choices, but we're not completely innocent in any of those cases either. We make choices as well, right? So those choices that we make are also influencing our current single status. So let's not, you know, fall into this natural inclination, which is a trap, by the way, that it's all the responsibility of where we're at in life comes from being, another person. Because that's not anywhere near true. Right. And in fact, we not only have some influence on where we are in our lives by the choices we make, our choices actually have the bulk of the influence in where we actually end up and how we actually live our lives and the joy that we have or don't have in the current moment. Because again, it's like what he says here. It's like we can always choose how we feel about whatever happens to us. And why on earth would you choose to feel anything but good? Well, I tell you what the answer to that question is. I read that in the book. I said, well, I know why someone would choose to feel something other than feeling good, because they have a habit of feeling that way. They've trained themselves to have a habit of feeling poorly when something poor happens to them. Now, again, simple ideas, but hard to implement. Not easy at all. And to get to this place where you're actually, looking forward to the challenges and just loving whatever comes. I mean, and that's the other thing. It's like amor fati is the response. And I was reminded of that classic conference talk from Elder Worthland from years ago. Its last conference talk, I believe it was, where he says, come what may and love it. Whatever comes to us in life, we don't always get to choose what comes our way, but we can choose our response. We can choose how we feel about it. We can choose the meaning that we take away from these events, because that is what makes our lived experience. It's the combination of the results that we get and the meaning that we give to those results. And we don't always choose the results. We have a large influence over those results from the actions that we take, and those are choices that we make. But we also choose our reality in the sense that we're choosing what things mean. right? So again, don't waste a second looking back at your expectations. Face forward and face it with a smug little grin. You're not going to get very far in life if, you're driving a car and you're always looking in the rearview mirror. You're not going to get very far. And too many of us are driving the vehicle of our lives by always looking at what happened to us in the past and thinking that that is deterministic. It's providing boundaries on future possibilities. But your future is only bounded by your choice, your thinking, your attitude, your perspective, your actions. That's what bounds your future possibilities. And so if you change the way you think and look beyond, what has been, and believe that you can actually be somebody different, that you can overcome, that you can become agreeable enough to make the agreements that you need to progress in the dating journey or whatever it is, it doesn't matter, right? It's like you can choose. You can choose so much of your lived experience. And like he says here, it's like, I mean, why would you delay? Why would you delay feeling? If you know you can make this choice, why would you delay making it? There's no sense in making a delay in it. So, um, again, that's not to say the good will always outweigh the bad or that it comes free without cost. Again, he's recognizing the reality of mortality and his mortal existence, but there's always some good contained within the bad. In other words, no matter what happens to us, there's always good that can come out of it. We can find it and be cheerful because of it. We can have joy in our journey. No matter what that journey entails, we can have joy in our journey. So, like I said, there's so much more in this that I can actually divvy out. Um, But, and, if I had like a co-host and guests, we'd have discussion about these points and get some really interesting conversation. So if you're interested in joining the program and helping us to make this more of a benefit toward Latter-day Saint singles who are going to be watching this, then, please, reach out, go to our website, jointhejourneyradio.com, and go to the contact page and, fill out a contact form and say, hey, I'm willing to come on the program. And, um, we'll take a look at that. So, because I really think that hopefully I was able to, bring you something good. But yeah, it's just what these things are. It is what it is, right? So, today I don't have any co-hosts or guests. I keep working on that. So everyone I've asked just says no. So what do I do? It's like I just say I keep working on it. I'm keeping to work on it, and I just don't stop. And eventually I get there. Eventually I will find people who do want to come on the program and who are willing to have these conversations that could benefit and enrich the lives of Latter-day Saint singles, so we can all have more joy in our journey. So again, that's all I have for the program today. You want to comment, leave it down below in the comment section. And you know, I- you know, until next time, this is your host reminding you there's joy to be had all along your journey. Take that joy and journey on.